Halfway to the Lamppost by Kaitlin Tremblay. Let's begin. Some scenes are timed. There is no going back. Protect Caroline. So let's continue. When we were kids, we were scared of shadows. But we also crave independence. We wanted to be special. We wanted to meet ghosts. We wanted to be the kind of special that was chosen by the supernatural. We wanted to be important enough to be extraordinary. We wanted to tell a story. But even our childish bravado wasn't enough to keep us in the bathroom long enough to whisper that third Bloody Mary. Because we were, after all, still scared of the dark. Melissa and Caroline lived down the street from each other. To be precise, they lived exactly 12 houses away from each other. Caroline desperately wanted that number to be 13, and so she counted the extra large garage next to the fourth house as a separate house. Melissa thought it was a bad sign. Caroline knew numbers were special. 3 a.m. was for witches, but that was in the middle of the night, and Caroline's bedtime was 10 p.m. So she'd have to settle for her 13 houses, even if one was really just a large garage. The houses that separated Caroline from Melissa wasn't very large, but Caroline still resented that they kept the two best friends apart. At the seventh house, on the side closer to Melissa's home, was a lamppost, a 7-foot-tall lamppost, painted bright white and stuck in a corner of the house's yard. When Caroline's smile would walk her to Melissa's, the lamppost became a beacon, halfway there. Caroline and Melissa eventually grew a bit older and demanded to be able to walk themselves home. Caroline and Melissa struck a deal with their parents. Caroline explained, "Melissa will meet me at the lamppost, so I only have to walk half the distance by myself." And Melissa beamed, "And then I walk her home. And then when I walk her home, I'll walk her to the lamppost." Their parents agreed, and Caroline and Melissa smiled at their newfound independence they had created for themselves. The night of... As adults, we'd figured there's more to be scared of than the dark. We became scared of our own shadows, the depths of ourselves that threatened to overspill the boundaries of our bodies. We learned a different kind of fear. Caroline was going to visit Melissa. Her backpack was full of black candles her mom bought her at the mall. Caroline wanted to play Bloody Mary again, and Melissa's house had the bigger bathroom, and it had a lock, so no brothers or sisters could interrupt. Melissa didn't want to play Bloody Mary, but it was her compromise to Caroline. Caroline's original idea was to try and hold a seance, but Melissa hated that idea even more. Bloody Mary was a stranger. Melissa didn't want to talk to dead people she knew. What? Melissa didn't want to talk to dead people she knew. Caroline stared down the street. It was dark, darker than usual, she thought, but she could still see the lamppost, a small white dot in the hazy, shadow-filled street. Melissa wasn't there yet, but she would be soon. They had just hung up the phone and agreed to leave at the exact same time. Since Melissa lived closer, she would get to the lamppost first. Caroline started walking towards Melissa's house. It would only be 6 houses until she would be with her friend. The first house, The first house actually belonged to Caroline's soon-to-be stepfather. Caroline's mother met him one day when they were both gardening. Caroline liked him. She had never really known her other father, so she had no hesitance accepting this new one. His house was long and low. It would be years before she understood what a bungalow meant and how a bungalow was different from a ranch. This house was brick, with a long driveway and an even larger front yard. From the sidewalk, Caroline tried to peer into the window. Her parents were at Caroline's home, so this house was empty. Caroline turned her attention back to the sidewalk and the lamppost, but as she did, a small black shadow darted across her stepfather's front yard. It was only in the corner of her eye, and it may not have been anything at all, or it could have been a squirrel. For some reason, Caroline felt her shoulders tighten. Something felt wrong. Investigate the shadow. Caroline investigates the area where the shadow was, but she sees nothing. Caroline is better able to understand what the darkness is. The darkness retracts. Leaving the bar, I can't believe it's over. I always thought I feel more sad than I am. I thought I feel regret. But I don't. I don't feel much. Or maybe it was just, for the first time in 5 years, an absence of fear. I forgot how much fear overtakes your whole body, poisons your blood, atrophies your muscles. Fear is panic and paralysis. When I was a kid, it used to take an entire night's worth of darkness to make me feel this fear. It used to take the full extent of my childish imagination, of the possibility of monsters and ghosts and creatures to make me feel like I couldn't breathe from fear. As a kid, I was scared, but I could stand to the fear. Fear would come from something in its full power, and it wouldn't come at all. As an adult, fear came in the form of one man. He wasn't a horizon of darkness, containing multitudes of monsters, all waiting to chomp. He was one man. The second house. The second house scared Caroline, even if she could never explain why. It wasn't what she was told a haunted house should look like. It wasn't dilapidated. It wasn't falling down. Its windows weren't boarded up. It didn't look haunted. The house had dark grey siding with black shingles, but the light didn't warm them up. Instead, when the sun was shining, the house seemed to darken. All the other colors around the house, the green of the grass, the blue of the sky, the brown wood of the fence, all brightened, like the sun was nourishing them. But the sun couldn't warm the house itself. Instead, this house felt out of place in the sunlight. The grey dampened. The black became muted. The house looked sickly. Caroline didn't realize she stopped walking. She was just staring at the house. It was night now and the house looked shrouded, like it was trying to hide itself from the outside world. Then a light flickered. Quickly, but the house and the night were dark, that the bright flash of light burning Caroline's eyes, a slowly fading after image. It was a candle, lit quickly and blown out magically. It was without any smoke fluttering in its wake. Caroline thought of the black candles in her backpack. Flame didn't just evaporate, as if it had never existed. Stand still. Caroline stands still, alert, watching, waiting. Caroline is becoming ready. Caroline understands more. A shadow covered the smoke and hid it from her sight. The darkness trembles. When we first met, I couldn't believe that he chose me. His blue eyes, fierce defense of what we believed was right, his charm. Everything about him felt like a prince from a fairy tale. And if he was a prince, and he chose me, then I was a princess. A mythical power I had never been able to tap into. A tomboy with self-esteem issues. It was magical. But it was also a lie. His transformation from the night protecting me from horrors to the dragon who trapped me in his lair was swift and thorough, and somehow entirely undetectable to me. I didn't know I was trapped behind bars of bitter and angry words until I was completely isolated, entirely alone. It's over now, though. I finally ended it. Not in a dungeon or a tower, but in a drunk bar with $5 whiskey and an iTunes playlist of early angst pop rock. Taking the first of many breaths, I begin my walk home. It's dark and it's cold, and there are shadows everywhere. But I feel safe for the first time in a very long time. The third house. Caroline is already at the third house, but she doesn't see Melissa yet. Usually, by the time Caroline is here, she can see Melissa, bounding towards the lamppost. Sometimes her German Shepherd is with her, on a leash, but pulling Melissa anyways. Often Melissa is alone. Their desire for independence also meant no animal guardians. But Caroline was usually too busy looking for a friend. She never paid attention to the third house. Caroline looked over and was surprised to see a rather plain-looking house. Dark red bricks, beige door. Nothing peculiar or extraordinary. Maybe that's why Caroline never really noticed it before. To her imagination, there was nothing worth noticing. No story to spin, no identity to impose. Bored by the house, Caroline squinted down the sidewalk again, trying to see Melissa. There was still no sign of her. Sometimes Melissa was slow. Rarely, but sometimes. As Caroline stared hard into the darkness, hoping her effort would create the outline of a friend, a low rumbling began to fill her ears. The kind of rumbling that shook the ground, shook her bones, and made her teeth chatter. The kind of rumbling that belonged to a monster. Look around for the sound. Caroline looks around for the sound. Everything is quiet. Caroline is aware. Caroline begins to understand more. The shadow is following her. The darkness shudders. I hope this time it was for real. We have broken up 1,000 times before. Every time he made me feel like he was personally pulling stars out from the sky just for me. It felt real. It felt different. But it wasn't. I looked over my shoulder. It felt like, maybe, for a second, he was there, chasing after me, begging to get back together. But this time, we were both serious. I'm gone. For good, I had said. He didn't even threaten me this time. Just started his drink. So despite the feeling of heavy, hot, thick breathing on my neck, he wasn't there. He wasn't chasing after me. No, he wasn't following me. A man like him doesn't chase. He hunts. The fourth house. The house with the extra large garage. But Caroline is not at the garage yet. First, she must get past the fourth house. Caroline's fear is palpable. She knows now that the shadow is following her. She doesn't know what it is or what it wants. She just knows it exists and that it is after her. Not only is the shadow chasing her, but she is alone. There is no sign of Melissa. Melissa should be here by now. She should have left a minute after Caroline did, at the latest. A monstrous rumbling from before grows, intensifies. Staring down the darkness in front of her, Caroline sees a lamppost. It is quiet. And then there is a whirlwind of rumbling, so loudly it feels like hands were pressed over her ears, fingers grabbing hold of hair to get a better grip, isolating her. The hands pull back, and in a thunderous movement, slam against her back, pushing her off balance, forcing Caroline to tumble to the ground, throw punches. Caroline balls her fist and punches with all her might. Her fist swiped through the air, hitting nothing. Caroline does not understand, but she is not afraid. The darkness recoils. Last time I tried to break up with him, he threatened to kill himself. We were long distance at the time, and I was broke, so I couldn't just grab a train to go see him. I was alone in a student town without any real friends. All I could do was call him. Call him. He'd answer every once in a while. He told me if I called the cops, he'd do it before they could save him. So I waited. 12 hours. He stopped answering my calls. I didn't have his roommate's number. I wasn't allowed to have it, he had said. Eventually he called me. Drunk. Happy. I met this really cool chick at a bar. I think you like her, he said. Not to encourage me. Not to build a bridge. To hurt me. Everything went back to normal then. Or whatever version of normal our relationship was. The fifth house. The garage. The magical place Caroline invoked to make the 13 true. It was dark. No light inside and only a small window cut into the small door. Caroline had never seen the garage open. And as far as she knew, the people who lived here didn't even own a car. She'd never see them driving one, but always taking a taxi, or walking or riding their bikes. What was in their garage? The sound of footsteps began to grow louder. Caroline looked over and finally saw Melissa. But as Caroline watched her friend walking slowly, lost in a daydream, she felt someone tugging at her attention. It felt like a magnet was pulling her, trying to get her to look back at the garage. Caroline fought it. And then, that's when the shadow appeared. Large, a void, a complete absence of light and reflection, a mad emptiness that hurt to look at. Rising up to its full potential right behind Melissa. Melissa was in trouble. Looked back at the garage. Caroline turns to look back at the garage, giving into the force pulling at her attention. There is a face in the garage, smiling, leering, laughing. Caroline understands more. The shadow is trying to scare her. The darkness pauses. I think I'm being followed. When I step, I hear the sounds of another set of footsteps. Not perfectly in sync with mine, but just half a step off, half a second off. Like somebody is imitating me. and is a second behind my own movements. Close, but not the exact same. It's scary. I check my watch. Close to midnight. I'm not far from my home. I picked a bar I could easily walk to in under 10 minutes, in case I needed a quick escape. Maybe that was a dumb idea. For a moment, I think of calling him. He probably hasn't left the bar yet. But I don't. I can't. Maybe if I called a taxi, I'd be in it. Safe. Instead of something in the dark imitating my footsteps. Instead of being haunted. The sixth house. Special Curiosity Passage. The shadow does not want Melissa. Caroline knows this. She doesn't know how she knows this, but she does. The shadow wants Caroline. It wants to hurt her first, to punish her. The shadow cackles. Caroline is able to see the shadow fully. She knows it for what it is. She recognizes it. It's not a shadow, and it has a weakness. Caroline's voice is her strength. Its weakness is its name. The face in the shadow, his name. Caroline must save Melissa. Shout out. The shadow recoils from Caroline. It releases Melissa, and Melissa runs behind Caroline. The shadow hisses, and for a moment, Caroline feels it. Feels a coldness ripple through her blood. Feels connected. Then the shadow is gone. Caroline and Melissa are alone, together at the lamppost. Caroline knew she had to say something, and she did. Caroline will forget about this. I feel alone. I grab my phone to call him, but before I can, it rings. My heart stops. I want it to be him. I am cold. I am alone now. I am nothing. I am stupid. I am worthless. But with him, I mattered. It's not him calling. It's my roommate. I ignore the call. I'm angry. I wanted it to be him. I miss him. My phone stops ringing. As it does, it feels that air becomes heavier around me. The darkness intensifies. It reminds me of something I felt a long time ago, as a kid. But I was able to help her. There was more to fear than shadows, even back then. There is a streetlight ahead of me. As I stare at it, I hear the footsteps again. This time they are not echoing my own. I cannot shout. Someone is behind me. They're walking up behind me fast. I can't move. I feel its breath on my neck. The shadow. It is invading my veins. It's polluting my body like smoke. Replacing my cells with its own. It is pain. It is agony. It is overtaking me. It is becoming me. It is numb. It is quiet. I thought I was strong. I'm not. Alone. And that's it. I think that's all, so I'll end it here right now. So thank you for listening. See ya!